So yesterday, Melissa and I were at this place, and she just about came unglued when she saw this one couple. And what was happening was the woman was in the restroom, and she came out of the restroom, and the man was standing. This is an older couple. The man was standing there waiting for her, but he was standing there just like actually waiting for her to come out of the restroom.
He was so cute.
Yeah.
He was. So
They were
smiley.
a very cute couple. But he was just like, it was the anticipation of it. It's like she was walking down the aisle or something like that. And he was just waiting for her to come. She comes out of the restroom and he just melts, And it was one of those moments where she was like, look at them. And we were walking around this place and she was admiring them the whole time. Just like.
They held hands the whole time.
They did.
Everywhere we went, they were holding hands and they were so cute. And I took a picture of them.
Oh.
So they're like our sweetness mentors now.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Anyways, welcome to Marriage Monthly. We are talking actually this month about how to keep it sweet. And so we have a star couple here. Melissa is going to introduce them. My name is Gabe, and this is Melissa, and she's going to introduce our guests.
All right. Well, you probably know this if you are around my life, Gabe's life at all. But this is my dad, Pastor Ken Wooten, and this is his amazing wife and my bonus mother, Louetta. And I would say that they have one of the sweetest relationships that we know of. So when we talked about, let's talk about how to be sweet to each other, because I'm a little rambunctious. I'm not super sweet.
I wasn't going to say anything.
Okay, but whatever. Anyways, I can be sweet. I'm just saying, but I'm a little spicy. Actually, Louetta is too.
That's
but she's older and wiser than me and knows how to treat her man with such tenderness and sweetness, and he does with her, and it's beautiful. And so we thought we would just ask them a few questions today and just kind of hear from their perspective on how all of us married couples can just have a sweeter and sweeter relationship. So let's start.
Yeah. All right. So we've got some questions for you because we think you guys just you have this way about you. You actually remind me a lot of that couple that we saw yesterday, and we catch you sometimes doing similar things where people are and you probably don't notice, but people are staring at you because they're going, "How do we get that?"
Can you feel it?
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah. So I want to ask you a couple questions. We're just going to go back and forth, but you guys have mastered the art, I think, of keeping it sweet with your spouse. And what we want to know is this something that you learned from your parents, or when did you decide to implement this approach into your marriage?
Well, for me, my parents' influence was good. Maybe they're not as touchy-feely as we are in this generation. But I never, ever heard my parents argue. I never heard them raise their voice. And you've heard me tell this story before. But if they started to argue just a little bit, one of them would go, scissors. And they would cut it off.
You've never heard that before.
I've heard that a few times.
They wouldn't carry it on anymore. And if they carried it on, it was behind bedroom doors or something. They never did it in front of me and
That's
my
probably really
sister.
smart. That's smart because a lot of times people will argue in front of their children, and that just makes your children insecure and scared. So
So and in those days they weren't like so touchy-feely and outwardly spoken with loves and stuff, but I felt so secure because my dad was a good provider, and my mother was a good manager. She managed the business that my dad had. He was a building contractor and self-employed, and that's all I ever knew. And I was in the 7th grade before I ever heard the word divorce.
Oh, wow.
And I had 2 girlfriends that were sisters in my class. And they invited me to come to dinner to their house one night. And so I went and I said something about, "Where's your mom?" And one of the girls said, "My parents are getting a divorce." I didn't know what that was.
Like, what's that?
And so I went home and asked my mom, what's divorce?
Oh.
And that's the first time I ever heard it, So
Wow.
it's just because we had such peace, I didn't know that people didn't get along,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for us, for Ken and me, I feel like he set the stage for our marriage because of the way he treated his kids. I watched him. I knew he was a pastor, and it was our, of course, second marriage for both of us. And having had long marriages before, and then to watch him, but watching him with his kids and his grandkids, and his tenderness and his gentleness, that really probably attracted me more than his spiritual life because of his kindness, and he just did that. And
You were smitten.
yeah, I was. And when we started dating. Every time he drove up and picked me up and come and opened the car door for me to get in, there was always a treat laying in the car seat. It was either flowers or candy.
So
Wow.
smart.
Yeah. And so
I like that idea.
Yeah,
I
that's
always,
a pretty
I
good
always
idea.
had a
I knew I
little.
was going to have a list of to-dos after this one.
I had a little treat waiting for me, and so he really wooed me. And then when we would walk someplace, and if he was ahead of me, he'd always put his left hand out like this behind him. He'd be walking and put his left hand out, when meant for me to come up and take hold of his hand. And he still
Show
does
off.
that today.
Yeah.
And we'll be walking across the parking lot at a grocery store or something, and he's ahead of me. He'll walk slow and put his hand out, just wait for me to get there so I can hold his hand. And we hold hands all the time, and it's really sweet. And so then from the first day we got married, he said to me, "I don't argue." And that really hit me. And I realized if you're going to argue, you got to have somebody to argue with. And so unless you want to stand in the mirror and argue with yourself,
Right.
it takes two to argue.
Yeah.
And we don't argue. We don't. I mean, one time, right too long after we got married, something came up. It's a simple thing, and he said it was like this, and I said, "I don't think so. I think it's this way." And so he said, "Okay." And so eventually I came around and realized I found something that confirmed what he had said. And I said, "I owe you an apology. You were right." He says, "I know." And so now that's kind of a deal. I'll say, "You were right." He says, "I know."
I agree with you, though,
That's
because
great.
I think a lot of couples have to prove they're right all the time. And so they're always arguing about stuff because they're like, well, I have to prove that I'm right and I'm more powerful and I have more, And it's like sometimes you just got to just let it go.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, we just we just don't. We don't argue. So.
That's wonderful.
And that's true. Never seen it.
yeah, that's
That's
right.
it. Yeah.
Baby, you want to hit the next question?
Sure. Dad, did you have anything to say? Do you have anything to say
next
on that
question,
one?
I
Okay.
will.
All right. Do you find that this comes naturally to you at this point, or do you still have to work at this sweetness, tenderness, gentleness?
Well, I wrote down that, Karen and I got married when we was 20 years old. And neither one of us came from a spiritual home or a sweet home.
Right.
We both came from a lot of loud talking, a lot of argument, a lot of bitterness, and just couldn't say a kind word to each other. And so Karen and I both, when we even started just going together, we said, if we get married, I sure don't want that in my home. We didn't know what we wanted or how to get it. We just knew that wasn't what we wanted.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, we got married, and what we did immediately, we went to seminars, to anything on marriage that would teach us how to have a great marriage. And then we started picking out people. And we both had this wonderful friend that owned the bakery in Oceanside, California. And he was a big man.
good.
And he
Good person
and
to
he had
snuggle up to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he had a wee little wife. And they were the cutest couple together. I mean, he just always laughed and smiled and all. And I'd go to his bakery, and he'd take that big old piece of dough out of the thing and throw it on the table and start cutting it. And he was just so good. And all the time he'd be laughing, telling jokes or whatever. And then when they were together, he was always so sweet to her. He always held her shoulder because he was tall and big. And he big round, too. But he always made sure his wife was taken care of. And I thought, that's what we want in our home, Karen and I said. And then Pastor Reed, who was my mentor, why, we always said, he and his wife had the sweetest relationship, and she was a talker, and he just let her talk, just let her talk. But it was just sweet to see that. And then the guy that ran the thing there in Oceanside, California, for Marines come in and win, you could win them to Christ there. why he and his wife had such a relationship. So we hooked up with guys and gals that had a sweet relationship, and we wanted to pattern our lives as a. And it's different. Louetta and I are different now because we're retired, and it's just the two of us. But it's hard when you have children. You're raising your children. You've got time schedules to be at, and all that. So you have to guard more and work harder when you have children than you do where we're at in life. But I think you can start learning it, as I did with Karen and I. I learned how to be sweet to her, talk sweet to her, kindness to her, and not ever be loud to her. I remember, I don't think I've ever raised my voice to her or her to me. We never did. And we just always kept that, working on that sweetness with 3 kids, raising them, getting them cars, all the stuff.
And we were a handful.
I know that story.
Yeah.
We were a lot.
But you were fun. To us, the children were fun. We really enjoyed having our 3 children. So I think that was really part of it, and went to Bill Gottfried's seminar and really learned how to have a sweet home. So to me, I was 20 years old when I started working on it. And you start working on how to have sweetness in your home. When you get our age, it is automatic then. It's pretty well automatic. We're just always kind and sweet to each other. So I think it gets more automatic. But if you don't work on it, it'll get bitter.
Yeah.
You'll get bitter. I was seeing in 1 Corinthians 13:4 says, love suffers long and is kind. And I like that. That's sort of that kindness. Love is kind. I think that's the same thing as sweet.
Yeah.
Kindness always is sweetness. And we have all these different ways we show sweetness to each other. I love to kiss her hand all the time. I hold her hand. Kiss
At
her
the
all
end of prayer.
Yeah.
Every meal. Amen.
Every meal.
And you just get all this little sweet stuff going all the time. I like to buy her flowers, and I like to do stuff that I can.
Not just on special occasions,
No.
just surprise times.
Yeah. And she does so much for me, really. I'm a diabetic, and my feet are very essential to a diabetic. That's what they usually lose first. The first is her feet. And so every night she rubs my feet with this lotion that massages and keeps the blood flowing through it. And every time I go to the doctor says, you have the most beautiful feet.
Thank you,
I think it's
Louetta.
really amazing that you've convinced Louetta that you have diabetes, so she'll rub your feet every night.
I know.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
right.
Thank you. I work hard at
I know.
that, too.
No, but I think what I hear you saying is that you have worked at, you both have worked at it. So it didn't come automatic. But maybe it is also encouraging to go, but it does get easier if you work at it.
That's
So,
correct.
Yes.
so it's not such an uphill battle if you're 10 years or 20 years into it or 30 years.
Yes.
And you've consistently done that. So maybe one thing you could share with us is some specifics. Like, what are some tactics that the rest of us could go, okay, here, what do you actually do to show kindness?
Just to back up just a minute on the kindness, we talked about this. Sometimes we see people showing more kindness to other people than they do
true.
their spouse.
yeah.
And sometimes even their cats and dogs get more kind
Well,
words.
but they're so sweet and innocent, and people are so obnoxious sometimes.
Yeah, I know. But
I kind of see the dog one, but
yeah, but
not
that's
the cat one.
No.
But sometimes it's
Yeah.
easier
I'm with
to do that and be kind to somebody else than it is to your spouse. So
Absolutely true.
true.
Yeah.
it's because we know all about them, and it's sometimes we don't overlook the faults that we have. So.
Right.
Yeah. And we can just be so selfish and into ourselves and like what do I want instead of thinking about what they want. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, what are some things that you guys do to show sweetness to each other?
Well, for
Number
one
3.
thing, from day one of our marriage, my sweetheart
Now, don't brag on me so much.
makes
Oh, please, you love it.
do.
brings me coffee in bed every morning.
Wow.
And sometimes I'm not even awake. He's a morning person. He's the kind of person that wakes up and says, "Good morning, God," and I wake up and say, "Good God, it's morning." And
Same.
and sometimes my coffee is sitting already by my bed on the nightstand, and sometimes I wake up when he brings it in, and sometimes I'm awake when he brings it. But every morning, without fail, he's brought me a cup of coffee, and that starts my day off really well. So
That's sweet.
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest things is learn to speak to each other with kind words, with sweet words. I tell her many times a day, "I love you," and she says that to me too many times. And so every morning we start out, we make sure we make time to stand in front of each other and tell each other that I love you, and then we kiss. Every morning we make that time to do that. That we're out of bed, we're going, but we stop and do that. The other thing that brings sweetness is stay sweet with Jesus. I mean, the sweeter you stay with Jesus, the sweeter you're going to be to your spouse. Really so. Now, I've become very, over the years, very tender with the Lord Jesus. It seems like as I've got older, I've melted, if you please. And I think that you just become, you become really sweet with Jesus. You love to spend time with him. You love to talk to him. And Louetta and I love to pray together. And what comes out of that is sweetness to each other. You just don't have time to be harsh with one another. And I think it's a step at a time. But you start. You know what I mean, Gabe?
Yeah.
I think we got to have a starting time. Write things down. I talked to my granddaughter the other day in Phoenix, and I seen how they were doing and all being just married, and I married them. And I said, do you get to read over those 10 things you wrote down you'd like to have in your marriage?
That's right.
And she said, yes, we do go over them often, and said, not only that, we've given them away to other couples.
Really?
Aww.
And
that's
so,
sweet.
Wow, that's mature of them.
Yeah. And we can pass on that sweetness, to every day.
That's
so
good.
anyway, I just thought some of the ways that we could do, we touch often, sweet words to one another. I mean, when she fixed a meal, I always told us good it is. And it's wonderful.
Even if it's warmed over 2 times. He still brags on
He's
it.
just Gabe's just happy to be eating, and he didn't have to cook
That's
it.
true. That's true. Because if she ever goes out of town or whatever, I always
doesn't eat.
forget to eat.
He forgets to eat. I'm like, what'd you have
I'm
for
like-
dinner? He goes, I forgot.
I'll notice later when I'm so out of
Ken being a
energy.
diabetic, he has
Yeah.
to eat. But that was one thing when we first got married. He said to me, I don't cook. And
true.
he says, and I said, well, I cook. And he says, I believe the person that cooks shouldn't do the dishes. And I said, I like that idea.
Yeah.
love that
Because I
great.
like to cook, and he likes to clean up. The Marine comes out in him, and he does a really good job. And if I start to even clear the table, he'll say, are you doing my job now? And then
That's
I
good.
will say, nope, I'm all done. That's
Okay,
it.
that's a great example of how you're keeping it sweet too, even in because for a lot of couples that would turn into an argument, right? Why are you hey, I told you I was going to do that. Why are you doing it? Can come out kind of bitey or kind of, but you're just asking a question sort of innocently like you do.
Yeah.
Are you doing my job now?
Yeah.
And I mean, that's enough, right? To go,
that's-
okay.
yeah, it's enough.
But
Hey,
it does keep it sweeter. And I think
I don't
that's
want to
good.
take his job away from him because
Yeah.
he's not going to take my cooking job away
No,
from me.
he
So-
does not.
When we got married, she said, what did you have for dinner? And I said, I had a can of beans, green beans. Said, well, did you cook them? I said, no, I just ate it out of the
Oh,
can.
it's so gross.
And she said, we're going to change that. I
Yeah.
said, okay.
We're pretty pathetic on our own, actually.
It really was.
It's sad.
So,
so
but
sad.
a couple of things, and then we be careful and don't use sharp words at each other. Be careful of your words. Just guard yourself. It's always a guard, because I tell you, it can come up quick.
Yeah.
I don't matter, even at our age, in our 80s now, we still guard and make sure,
Think before you speak.
Yeah.
Sometimes the first thought that comes to your mind should stay there. It shouldn't. You shouldn't let it out. You know. And for Ken, we can be driving around and he'll say, "I'd love to do something nice for you," and I say, you live doing nice things for me. I don't know what to say for you. And so one day we were driving around, and we'd been married quite a while, and he didn't know this. And I just threw out, I said, you know what I really like? I really like Diet A&W root beer. And you know what he did? He drove all the way. We only have one here in our town. And we were on the other side of town, and he drove all the way over and went through the drive-thru and got the biggest Diet A&W root beer they had, and we shared it because he could have it too. But that's just the kind of life he keeps going, and it's easy to follow if we, And like he said, we don't have children at home. We don't have soccer games and swimming lessons and things that the kids are involved in. Our time is ours, and we don't have as many interruptions as families do. So
I feel like even then, like when we had young kids at home, we still had to watch our words to each other, because you can still get really sharp and sassy when your schedule is out of control and you feel like it's out of control. You can just be like, "Did you hear me? I said, like you can get." So guarding against that, one of the things that I think couples should do is like a 5-second rule. Like before you respond to a text, to an email, to words in person, just take a few seconds to just breathe and step back and just relax a little bit, because I think we want to respond quick, and when that happens, it's a train wreck 99% of the time.
And many times, if your children are pretty young, you will hear that come out of their mouth.
Yeah, they copy you. And when a kid gives the sassy words, I instantly like, "Oh, where did they get that from, Mama?"
So
I think the last thing on that question you asked is that we laugh a lot in our home. We like to laugh. We like to watch movies that make us laugh, that make us happy. And so we like to laugh. We just make fun of each, and we never make fun of people. We never laugh at other people. We just have these little things in our home that we laugh at each other at. It's just cute. So keep the laughter going.
Yeah, it almost sounds like you guys have approached sweetness through positivity. That you would the positivity leads to sweetness, and negativity, is tough to be sweet if you're being negative. So I appreciate that.
You had one more question, I think. What was that?
What do you think causes people to not be sweet to each other, and what should they do about that?
Say the first thing you said to me when we discussed this.
I don't remember. Oh, stay off the phone. I think a lot of times that ruins the sweetness. We go to a restaurant to have a meal together, and we're on our phone. Or we sit down at the dinner table, or we're in our home just relaxing. We sit together on the couch, and we just sit side by side. We touch. We're sitting by there, but the phone is not allowed. And we will watch a movie. We're watching a movie. We're not on our phone. And I think, as I watch couples in restaurants and all, that phone is a great destruction of being sweet to each other. You're not looking at them. You're not being sweet. I don't know how many comments we've had, and it's so funny. People watch you, and you don't even know they're watching you. And they'll come up and put their hand on my shoulder or her shoulder and say, "You guys are the sweetest couple we've ever seen." We say, "Where'd that come from?" And we weren't asking for it. We sat together in the restaurant. We'd sit side by side. We don't sit across from each other. Sometimes we have to. They set us in a... But, just a time to be sweet to each other. So we do that. One of the other things is the snappy words. We be careful with snappy words. Mean looks.
Oh, yes.
You look mean. And a lot of times we ruin our children when we give them mean looks in restaurants or out, and that really can hurt the spirit of the child. That everybody saw you look at them with that really mean, ugly look. Keep it to yourself. Go do it in the mirror if you want to see it, but don't do it to your child. Don't do it to your sweet wife. And, so...
It just screams disappointment.
It does.
To your spouse or your kids.
Yeah.
That's sad.
Yeah, recently we were in a restaurant, and sometimes you watch families come in, and everybody in the family's got a cell phone. And they come there for family time, and they're on their phones, and there's no talk. Well, then recently we watched this family, and they had 3 children, young children, husband and wife brought them in. And the place we were at, they had these little table games, and each one picked up a table game and brought it to the table. And while they were waiting for their food, the parents and the kids all got involved in these table games, and they were having the best time, and they were laughing, and one of them would build something, and the other would knock it down, and then they would just laugh. And so when we got ready to leave, I just walked over and I told them, I said, "You guys are a beautiful family." And she said, "We are?" And I says, "You know how many families we as older people watch come and they never spend time with their children? They're on their phones." And she says, "I know." And I says, "You guys are doing a good job. And your children, you can tell it really portrays in their children." And she really thanked me. She said, "Well, thank you," because they don't know if they're doing a good job. They're first time to have kids. And
You never know. But you hit on something there with the board games. I know it sounds cheesy, but board games bring your family together.
Yeah.
They make you laugh together. You're interacting together. You're just doing something together that's fun and memorable.
Yeah.
That's so much better than all 4 of us sitting here on our phones.
Yeah.
If we were just play apples to apples right here, we would be laughing in 2 minutes and having
And
the
you
best,
got to start
best time.
that. You got to start that young too. When the children are young. When you get up and they're 16 and 17, say from now on we're going to have board games and stuff. You might have a problem.
They're like, "No thanks, I'd rather not." But I don't know. I just think that's fun. Like doing something like that together is so much fun. Gets
I
you
do
off the
too.
phone. I agree.
Well, you guys, thank you so much for your wisdom. Truth is, we all want to be just like you guys when we grow up.
That's right.
That's a little scary, but thank you so much. We'll try to be on our best behavior.
And thanks to all of you for joining us for this episode of Marriage Monthly. We hope it's been helpful, and we want to encourage you to like, subscribe, and share because we know all the couples out there could use a little bit of hope and help. And I want to encourage you to be looking out for each other and being sweet this month for each other.